going to be making Windsor Crown today, which is a theme on a cottage loaf basically. It's very much a traditional loaf. A third is on the top, 2/3 on the bottom, slashes around the edge to look like the bottom of the crown, and we're using a special technique with scissors on the top which gives a cut around the top of the cottage loaf which gives a crown appearance. The idea came from Will's wedding, but also Queen's Diamond Jubilee this year as well, so it's a celebration of royalty really, based around that. So it's a new product out of a very traditional British product essentially, and we're going to make it from a traditional British sponge which is a pre-fermentation. We're using a little bit of butter in there, milk powder, and we're actually using some Caddy real ale in there as well, just a touch to give a sort of quite a malty flavour to the crust also. Well, we're going to make the Windsor Crown sponge now. A sponge is basically a pre-fermentation, and it's a traditional British fermentation. It's an amount of flour, water and a small amount of yeast. So we've got 100% flour, about 50 to 60% water and around about 0.5% yeast. What we're going to do is we're going to combine the flour. We're using the Marriage's Manitoba, which is a strong flour. I'm going to put that in there with the yeast. I'm going to put the water in. The water's around about 18 to 20 degrees in temperature. And we're going to put it in a spiral mixer on slow speed and just combine that together for about 2 or 3 minutes until the water's hydrated into the sponge. What we're going to do then is we're going to put it in a tub, cover it so there's no drafts getting to it, and we're going to ferment that at ambient temperature for around about 16 hours at around about 22 degrees C. Once it's fermented for that time, you can see basically that we're getting a nice stringy texture out of that, quite a lot of strength in it, really bubbly, and it smells very alcoholic, really sweet and malty. And what that's going to do in the Windsor Crown is it's going to allow a lot of flavour into the loaf, some great texture as well. Okay, so Windsor Crown recipe, really simple oven bottom bread recipe with slight few adaptations. We've got a good strong flour from Marriage's, using a little bit of Canadian wheat in there. We've got the sponge which we pre-fermented. We've got some milk powder going in there which is going to help with the goldness of the crust. We've got some compressed yeast, salt, unsalted butter, and some Caddy Henrietta ale, which is quite a pale ale, but that adds a good flavour, and water. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of water into the sponge so that when I tip the sponge in, it doesn't stick to the bowl. Okay. So when you put water into the sponge, you can see it lifts away from the sides of the bowl, really nice and easy. And then I'm going to mix this until it's developed. We're going to mix it on slow speed, which is 50 revolutions per minute. So we're just mixing the Windsor Crown. We're at the last final stages of mixing. I can just hear it sort of popping away there a little bit. I don't want to take it much further because it's got a sponge in there. So what I'm going to do is, because we haven't got any bread improvers in this, it's a natural dough, no additives. I'm going to take it out and let it bulk ferment for an hour and a half. And what we're going to do in that hour and a half, we're going to give it 2 folds as well, which will also put some strength into the dough. Although it is quite an extensible dough, it's got strength in it already. It's slightly undermixed because the bulk fermentation will develop the gluten structure in there further. So it's about 90% developed. So there's the dough, it's 23 degrees, final dough temperature. We're going to bulk ferment it, so that means that we're going to ferment it in its bulk for all the gluten to mature and relax, and produce CO2 to start opening up the cell structure. It's important to cover the dough as well, so that we don't get any skidding over of the dough. Okay, so now we've given the Windsor Crown its first 20 minutes bulk fermentation. As you can see, it's probably just got a little bit of gas production, it's moving nicely. What we're going to do is just give it a little bit of a fold, which is going to add in the strength. So basically all we're doing is folding one half over, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half and half again, fetch it over that way so that the smooth sides facing up. Okay, and you can instantly see that that's actually put a lot more strength into it. We're subdividing the cell structure down, and we're also, the other important bit is that we're evening the temperature out throughout the whole of the dough as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover that again, leave it for another 20 minutes and then give it another fold. Okay, so now we're at the stage for the Windsor Crown where we're going to start dividing and shaping. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 drop weights here. We're going to do the base, which is 525, and then the top part, which is 225. What we're going to start doing is start cutting it into sections so that we're ready for dividing and rounding. So we're looking 525 on the base. Okay, and then we're looking for 225 for the top half. So what we're going to do, once we've scaled the whole lot of the dough, I'll just show you very quickly and briefly what we're doing, is rounding up next. Okay, so what we're going to do is rub loosely round these pieces up. We're going to let those rest before we give them a final mould, but essentially we're going to repeat that process till we've scaled the whole of the dough, give them a rest for 5 minutes, and then we'll start assembling the cottage loaves on the Windsor Crowns together. Okay, so for the Windsor Crown, we've let the dough pieces rest for about 5 minutes now, so the gluten's relaxed a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to start forming the 2 dough pieces. So we've got the larger dough piece and the smaller dough piece. We're just going to round them off, just loosely, just to tighten them up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the top piece onto the base, like so. I've got a little bit of rice flour. I'm going to sort of dust over the top. I'm just going to put my thumb through it, wiggle it round, and that's an actual mould in action. It's actually tightened the whole loaf up. Okay, so that's what we're looking for in terms of a cottage loaf. Nice firm base and top, making sure that the top's sealed into the bottom, because we don't want the top moving or going lopsided when it goes into the oven stage. So, right, so once we've moulded the top and bottom piece of the Windsor Crown, what we're going to do is we're going to cut it with a serrated knife. The best way I found to do this is we're going to make quite deep incisions going at around about 45 degrees. I place my hand on top and spin it round. And I'm just cutting the base. So there's about 12 cuts in there. What we're going to do next is we're going to place it onto cloth and then give it a buffer in between and repeat that process, and then we put them in the prover for around about 40 minutes to an hour, proving on until they've doubled in size, and then we'll progress on to the next cut on the top piece. So we've got Windsor Crown, we're ready for baking now. They've had around about 30-40 minutes proof time. We're going to do a special cut now really, which is using some hairdressing scissors actually, really pointed, very accurate, easy to use. And what we're going to do is the top part of the crown, we're going to make some deep incisions, and we're going to run about 8 cuts round. The thing is about the borders, you can sort of move it round so it's easier to cut. Okay, so you can see that we're getting the spike stuck up, and also we're creating a star in the middle where the cuts move away from the flour as well. So when they're ready to go in, we slide them into the oven, straight on the salt. At this stage as well is the oven's at 250, top and bottom pressures 7 and 7. I'm going to inject about 10 seconds of steam into there as well, and we'll repeat that process throughout the whole stage of baking. Okay, we've just accessed the Windsor Crown loaves out the oven. We've had around about 30 minutes now. Damp has been released, so we're drying the crust out 2/3 of the way through. There we have it. So you can see where we've used a scissor cut, we're getting the spike and then we're getting the star as well. Getting a nice sort of cushion effect around the base to represent the crown as well.